What a mess it is all around here. This down to you, buddy.
Oh,
Good
mate.
morning.
Well, you're at the start of yours. I'm at the end of mine.
But it's a bit warmer where you are compared to where it is here.
Oh, mate. Yeah. What temperature is it there?
Oh, God knows. That's the thing about Brits. I've noticed that people in the States and people in Oz, they tend to know what temperature it is at any given time. With Brits, we don't. We just assume it's cold and miserable, and therefore so are we.
Can you see the sun there, or is it still cloudy?
Cloudy. Yeah. First thing in the morning, everything's a bit crap. I'm very bleary. So is the world. I'm sort of booting myself up a bit. So a bit like this. I'm very dusty.
Nice
Covered in
one.
cobwebs, just like deep thought, just like us. So say I don't know what this is exactly, but it's sort of an extension of the conversations we've had before, isn't it? Bloody hell, mate! Your headphones look really high tech. Actually, that looks pretty good kit.
These aren't too bad. They're very cheap, but I tell you what,
They don't-
sound in.
They don't
really
look
well.
cheap. No, they don't look cheap. Anything that's kind of off-white like that, I always assume it's an Apple product, and therefore it's not cheap.
Yeah, no, this is was it Walmart or we call it Big W out here, but yeah, it's what
What's
Big W. Yeah.
Oh, I said Big Wick. I thought that means something different here.
Yeah, but this is probably a $30 pair. They're pretty good. They actually got really good sound for what they are. I wear these when I go running and all that sort of thing too. So it's really good, and for podcasting, it's perfect.
Yeah, just to keep it all sort of closed in. I got the old earbuds in, tucked in under my hat.
Oh,
Inside
nice. So
baseball,
keep your,
as the Americans call
keep
it.
it warm.
Yeah, keep my
Nice.
nut warm. Oh, mate. Yes, whose idea was this? Was it yours or mine?
I think it's yours, but I'm all up for it.
It was mine. I've only got myself to blame, haven't I? And anybody out there who's listening or watching to this bollocks. I don't know what I can think of it all. Yeah, but it's good. It's like a big sort of it's a trans. Well, let's work it out. It's a not just trans global, isn't it?
Trans-global, transatlantic, something like that, isn't it? Because
Trans global Zoom call, really.
it really is. And if you look at it, it's not even the pond. There's like 3 ponds in the way to get to your place. I have to go all the way around to Africa to get my signal there. So yeah, it's
Do you really?
It's trans-global. Oh well, if you look at the map, yeah, I'm gonna get it. I've got to even get it past Ireland to get you to place.
I mean, it just goes to show, doesn't it, what us blokes can do when we set our minds to it.
Well, you just ask John Dykstra, he'll tell you.
So I'm roughly there where the old black arrow is on the orange splat in the top left hand. Where are you, pal? Where are you roughly on the green blob?
So if you look on the east side of Australia, we're about halfway up that sort of side of Australia, probably a little bit more than half, and that's where we are on that east side. So where it's got that little triangular bit that goes sharp, that's Cape Coming down from that. We're about a third of the way down. So we're in the tropics.
Is that what they call it, the tropics?
Oh, mate, we don't even see winter here, mate. It's always 30 degrees and at least 80% humidity.
Oh man,
It's bizarre.
it fills in some of the gaps, doesn't it? So it was straddling the globe. Because I don't know how long now. Because when did we first connect? It's through the FPN. I've been part of that since late 2017, early 2018. It wasn't long into that before I got a call from you saying, "Good day, who the fuck are you?"
I was going, who is this guy? Oh, that's right. He also likes that franchise that asks, who is the doctor? Who is that?
Oh, you've got to put me in a bad mood right away.
But you know what? What's great is that I knew that you're into, obviously, BBC shows. You know Doctor Who. Folks that are listening, you know what I'm talking about. The BBC, for us out here, is the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission. So we always got those shows coming out. And, of course, not just Doctor Who. Obviously, Doctor Who's one of the big ones, probably the first. But there was also Monkey Magic, or better known as just Monkey. and that is, of course, one of the beloved shows of my youth. And it kept getting replayed every 10 years or so. They'd put it back on the ABC, and you'd have, obviously, it's Dragon Ball Z for the new generations, folks. If you don't know what that story is, it's Journey to the West, the Chinese mythical show. But it was done as a Japanese TV show. And then basically the BBC got a hold of it and they redubbed the voices, and the dubbing is hilarious. In some places, not safe for work dubbing too, by the way. And it's great. Obviously, we've got Monkey, Pigsy, Sandy, and Trippy Tarka going against all the demons. And if you watch the show religiously like I did, you realize the same demons kept coming back as different characters. So they didn't have a huge cast, and the same town was getting used in that first season. It's when they went to China proper in the second season that you start to see, obviously, the horse that was, the cowardly sort of lion sort of character. But the rest of it came into such a brilliant show. That, and of course, the big one that we've always talked about, which sadly you guys didn't get to see much, but we got reruns for like 20 years. Goodies is probably, goody, goody, yum, yum, folks. It is one of those great shows.
I thought to myself, if I'm talking to Adam, it's how many minutes will it be before he mentions Monkey? I'd say I suspected. I think it'd be about 10, but you surprised me. It was about 5, coming up to 6. But the thing is, when we first started talking, I thought to myself, there could be all sorts of things that we'd sort of bond on. Maybe Neighbours, which I loved when I was a kid. Prisoner Cell Block H, otherwise known as Prisoner in your country. You made it, so you can call it what you want. Prisoner. I should call it Prisoner too. There's The Prisoner and Prisoner. It's not that complicated. So Prisoner, which I love that show. But the one thing it never entered my head that we may bond over was a Chinese show.
And it's one of those great ones that had a really good soundtrack. Look, both seasons had fantastic. Sort of a funk rock soundtrack by a Japanese band that was just nailed it. And we all know the songs because we all used to sing them, at school and all that sort of stuff. But what's great about it too is the action. And a lot of those shows in Japan had great action, right through. Some of those, obviously, stars that we got in the 80s later on, like Shoichi Kosugi, which became Shokosugi, Japanese karate champion, became the linchpin for all the ninja movies that we saw. But him and obviously, some other greats, Sonny Chiba or Shinichi Chiba, the late great action star, they did all these massive TV shows. They do 2 seasons and then go on hiatus for a while, and then come to, if it was successful enough, another one or a movie or something like that. But the action and everything was really epically done. These, of course, are called Jidai Geki in Japan, which means period dramas or period, action, whatever you want to call it. But that was one of the best ones. Jidai Geki.
Jidai Geki.
And that's where George Lucas got the name Jedi from. Is actually taking that first, even though it's got nothing to do with it.
I was about to suggest that, and I thought he's going to tell me. Don't be so bloody silly. But I mean, what? But the thing is, what you've just said though, when you likened Monkey to the Wizard of Oz, I thought, oh yeah, how have I not noticed that?
100%. And it's that journey to Buddha, obviously, they get the scripture and all that sort of stuff, and then bring it back. The Trippy Tarka has to do, and if you look at it, it's Dorothy. It's it's the whole.
So I read The Wizard of Oz when I was a kid. The first book. There's about 50 of them, isn't there? But I read the first book, and I loved the movie. But I know nothing about it at all. You're a big reader. Was L. Frank Baum inspired by the journey to the West in some way, or is this just totally? It's just one of those sort of myths, like the hero's journey, which people somehow seems to manifest in different cultures at different times.
I think it definitely goes back to like you're saying, it's there's only so many plots or so many ideas you can do as a storyteller. He'll give you an idea to The Wizard of Oz. Also, endured as back in 2009, there was a sequel. One of the many that they tried to reinvent the wheel with Terminator, called Terminator Salvation. And, they tried for what they could to, do the future war with robots, and it starred Christian Bale, who I thought was actually very good at his John Connor.
Yeah, I like that.
Sam from the Avatar movies, our boy out here, who actually did really well in the latest Kevin Costner film, actually the Western that he did. If you haven't seen it, folks, go and check out Horizon, the new Western it's part 1 of 4. We'll go into that later, but it's really good.
Like the Avatar of Westerns, is it, that Costner's doing?
Yeah, it may as well be, yeah. But it's really good. He's going back to classic storytelling. But anyway, Terminator Salvation is a not so subtle nod at, the Wizard of Oz, because it's got the Tin Man going down the yellow brick road, and actually have a yellow brick road in the movie. If you watch it close enough, it's there.
I remember. I haven't seen that for donkey's years. I've stayed away from Terminator for quite a long time, but I did recently buy something Terminator related, and I'd like to say it was because of some sort of intellectual purpose or for research. It was actually simply because this girl is hot as fuck, and I want to see some more of her diving around.
Great series.
So I've bought that, but yeah, you're a big Terminator guy. No, I remember the yellow robe. Actually, I remember the entire film looking very yellow in its hue, looking like it had been sort of stained with something, and having that quality of being sun drenched and almost bleached out is how I remember Terminator Salvation. And I actually had a lot of fun with that. It was the last time I had serious fun with that franchise.
He's great. He's a great actor, and he's actually worked again with Arnold a few years later. Even though Arnold wasn't in that, he was surgically put in by CGI. But he worked. Yeah, there he is. He worked on Sabotage, which is actually done by David Ayer, the director of Suicide Squad, and it's actually quite a good take on. Basically, it's a group of guys that work for the police or whatever it is, and they do hostage stuff, rescue, whatever you call it. But there's a bit of corruption going on because somebody's on the cake taking a bit of cash. Can you give me the cash, mate? And
same the world over that.
And you get this really interesting portrayal by Arnold, who I think's got the fat end of the stick with the action going on lately. Most of the action movies out there are a bit limp-wristed at the best of times now. We've lost that edge. And it doesn't matter who it is. It's just they're made by committee these days, a lot of the movies that are out there. And unfortunately, the directors, unless they're Denis Villeneuve or Christopher Nolan, sad to say, a lot of the directors aren't getting what they need out there. And now,
so that was also on my hit list. So Denis Villeneuve and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought, what am I likely to talk about with Adam? And those names are going to turn up as well. But you're quite right. Action movies. It is. I mean. Kind of certainly limp. I'd say limp all over. Never mind limp-wristed. Some people are sort of bringing it back. There's the war horses we can rely on. I mean, I love what Stallone's doing in Tulsa King, especially. There are certain key players like that. But there are other people who've sort of picked up the mantle and who are kind of growing out that mullet again, aren't they? And swinging back into action.
Well, even I am.
It's coming back.
It's coming back. It's coming back, baby. Now, the big thing is, if you look at storytelling today, it's about bang for buck. Budgets are, they are what
that's
they
what
are.
She said.
But
word for word,
and I've looked at all these different movies that keep coming out, whether it's on streaming or vice versa. The last great action movie that came out and delivered what it said it needed to do was Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. It was
good, was it?
No, it was a good movie, yeah.
I meant to catch it, and I haven't yet. It's still on Amazon. I can watch it any time. But I think because I didn't watch I think it was only about a year ago that I watched the Swayze one, and I thought, I don't want to watch the remake it quickly.
Mate, that's a must-watch, and a must-listen to the Mullet episode too, guys, if you haven't listened to the one I did on Roadhouse 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. But, that it literally, all it did was reinvigorate something with modern martial arts. So, obviously, the craze out there right now is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the whole fighting and the MMA and all that sort of stuff, which is a sport, folks. Not a martial art, it's a sport. Let's just put it.
Because you and I, we tend to do a lot of the things that one another doesn't, don't we? So I'm more sort of running and lifting and all that kind of thing, whereas you are the kind of the more studious and concentrated sort of machine-like moves, the considered moves of the martial arts. You know everything about these sort of martial arts, how they differentiate one from another, don't you? And that's always, again, that's another thing that's I've always been interested in, but far too too lazy to set about doing. I can, because running for hours and hours, I can put one foot in front of the other. I can do that. But the things that you guys do when you learn different stances and techniques and things like that, man, it just blows my mind. Amazing.
Oh, it's gone for years. Like I've done martial arts since I was about 7 years old, so that's 40 years that I've been doing it now. But I put the same into walking and running, and hiking is something I do too, up through the mountains up here. And you just zone completely out. You put on a bit of music or a podcast. Right now, folks, a little bit of a plug for the official June Prophecy podcast, who just had Mark Strong, the fantastic British actor, on there, talking about playing Emperor Yabiko on there. And it's just great. You just zone out, put that on, listen to it, and your mind just completely takes over. You'll know yourself, when you go running, your body gets to a rhythm where your breathing acclimatizes. And you minimal effort, it's efficient. And that's what I do the same with martial arts too. If I'm sparring, I currently do a style called GKR, which is my melding of Goju Karate and Shotokan. And those two karates obviously do heavily a lot of sparring. Now, that's very high impact sort of cardio, sort of breathing, I guess you could say. And as an asthmatic, I can only do that for short bits. So for me, running's a way of getting my body to acclimatize to short breaths, but being comfortable.
Yeah, that's what I say to people about the breathing all the time. It's just as important as anything that's going on with any extremity.
Oh, exactly. And every art that I've done has been a part of that. So, I studied karate for about 11 years when I was a kid. I had a mum who basically said, look, if I've got this amount of money or this amount of money, and you can only spend it on the one thing as a kid, and I could either learn guitar, which I was really into and I still do today, just as much as karate, or I could do martial arts, which is karate. And the Karate Kid had just come out, and I was a bullied kid at school.
It was Karate Kid. I was going to ask if it was anything to do with Monkey, because about a week and a half ago, as of time of recording, they announced on social media, the way that they do, that the BBC and places like that it had been 45 years since Monkey first appeared on British TV. So it was probably around the same that it was. And I remember, now you've just said that, it's literally, I've just had this sort of memory pop in my head of myself and my brother and a couple of the kids from the local street grabbing things like garden rakes and old brooms and using them as kind of Pixie's weapon there, Sandy's pitchfork and Monkey's stick, and fighting with them in the garden, all us kids. And it kind of inspired us like that. As you said, like a few years later, the Karate Kid kind of did the same, where everybody thought they were an instant karate expert. But that was kind of the fundamental for you. That was the thing that kickstarted it for you. Both those things somewhere.
That got me started. And, I obviously did karate all through my early years into my mid-teens. And then there was a movie that influenced another style I did. So I'd done karate to a very high level. I almost got my black belt in that style at the time. And then I watched this movie called Above the Law with Steven Seagal. And just the first 2 minutes of that, it just sold me straight away. I said, I need to start learning whatever this is, because this is even more efficient than karate. And it was. It's an art about throwing people and throwing and disarming. And basically, this guy was taking on multiple opponents and not getting a scratch on him. And there was something in that just rung true. And anyway, so I took a style. I did a style called Kino Kenyu-kai, which is an Aikido style based heavily around energy. See,
now this is all starting to sound like double Dutch to me. It's like a foreign language. It's like this. You may as well be talking in Swahili.
I'll put it in layman's terms. It uses no muscles. It uses no real force. You're using the attacker's speed, arrogance, and anger all against them. So all the moves are designed in a circular motion that when that punch comes in, we are going to meld with that punch, but then we're going to flip it another way, and it flips them on their head. And a lot of those moves, they look flowery when you watch them on video, and this is why a lot of armchair martial arts, the ones that sit there and go, oh, that's bullshit, that'll never happen. Oh, you couldn't do that in mixed martial arts. No, you couldn't, because there's rules. This sort of
diving and flexing and flipping. Adam, the only thing I've ever flipped is one of these, I'd say.
But when you watch Aikido and you see the people rolling out of the techniques, they're doing that so that they survive. That's the whole point. So if an attack was, and again, I will agree with this with some of the other martial arts out there, you're going to eat a few punches as a grappler, even as a jiu-jitsu stylist. You are going to eat a few before you can actually really grapple and get in there. But once you close that distance, that range, and you are able to actually pull off one of these moves correctly, then, they're going to land their head on the cement. They're out. They're done. So that's why I liked about it. I did that about 4 years and then also taught it as a junior. But then there was, capoeira came in. I did Bujinkan Ninjutsu, which now we know is not really ninjutsu. It's actually more of a samurai art. And that the ninja or the shinobi no mono was just a job of a samurai. Funny that. There you go. There's a little bit of history for you there.
Ninja's more a job title than a
It
a
is,
discipline.
yeah. Yeah, it's like if you're a cabinet maker and you might be able to do on the side something to do with a bit of electrics or something like that. With that, that's what it is. So a samurai was actually just a class, not a knight. There were samurai auditors, samurai financial people, there were samurai lawyers, and shoemakers. They're all samurai because they're all the one class. Then there was the shinobi no mono, which were like the CIA, the FBI, all that sort of stuff. They were people that information gatherers more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there may have been assassins amongst that too, but I've got one of the books, the Bunsen Shukai, which is the actual original ninja training manuals. And when you get in there, I'm like, oh, I want to read about the ninja martial art. This is going to be so good. And then, and then you open up and you go, oh, what the heck? And that was my reaction because it's about lockpicking, about how to communicate as an agent out in the the wild. How to hide.
This sounds like a very dangerous thing to give to a bloke like you. You could pop out of any bush at any time, or sail down on a target. Especially people come back from the shops and looking up and seeing you, going abseiling down from the local laundrette. Yeah.
Apart from you do learn all the samurai weapons in Bujinkan, which is great. And as a martial artist that wants to do it for the history style of things, it's fantastic. Yes, you learn the samurai sword. Was there a ninja sword, folks? No, there wasn't. Sorry, folks. It's a samurai sword. You learn all the different types of throwing stuff.
So when I think of ninjas, I think of shit that they throw. So those little star things,
which is a samurai weapon. So when you actually see the samurai out there and those jewels that you see in the movies, that was all horseshit too. What they used to do is actually throw those things at each other, and they would try and hit the person's arm that was drawing the sword, so they'd cripple them. And then they'd just come up, dirty fight, pull out the sword and cut their head off anyway. So it was, it was more bloodthirsty. But again, it's the same as the Wild West in America. And there wasn't all those gunfights and all that sort of stuff. It's not warfare, on the OK Corral.
It wasn't as honourable as cinema may have you believe.
Oh, 100%. So, yeah. But, I mean, my folks said you can either do martial arts or do guitar. And I said, well, I'll do martial arts because I was getting bullied. It's funny how martial arts changes you. And it's not about going out and chasing the bullies and beating them up with these techniques. It's about learning verbal martial arts, learning confidence, learning that there's no need to fight. And
I used to have a champion judo guy. He used to be a sort of part of my extended family. He's a big bloke. I'm a seriously big guy. I'm talking tall, very, very wide. He'd worked in the prison service all his life and things like that. You just wouldn't argue. Nobody would cross this guy ever. And you think, well, who on earth? Because he'd do these judo. He taught judo, and he would travel to judo tournaments. And you think, who in their right mind is going to fight a bloke that size? And then you see a snippet of that world because he stood out. You'd see him walking down the local shops or something, and you knew exactly who he was. Him and his wife. There was about 4 foot height, difference between them. So they stood out for that reason. But this bloke was just far, far bigger. You think, well, who is going to fight him? And then you go to a tournament with him, and you think, okay, there are some fucking big blokes out there. He wasn't the only one. There are some real giant guys out there who, as you say, take up these martial arts and chuck one another around. And this is it's not exactly a subculture as such, but there are a lot of guys out there, and women to a lesser extent, who are built this way, who can do one another, who can just throw each other around like ragdolls, I suppose, in the way that kids do in the playground.
It really is. And I mean, the thing is that, again, there's the different types out there too. So obviously there's, and actually you could call it three. So there's martial arts, which I do. And that's really, the proper style, the full style, all the different parts of it, the sparring, the kata, which is your forms, and then just the kihon, which is the techniques. But then you've got
that I recognise that. I recognise that as an 80s kid when you say kata. I think that's the Karate Kid. I could do that. I'd do that. I'd take that up. I've tried to sort of watch the Karate Kid when I was a kid, and you watch him do that, particularly in the third movie, and you think, I could try that.
Yeah, and it's exactly like that's part of what they do. And actually, in Okinawa, they don't do any sparring at all. They just do kata and techniques because they believe that it's you should be memorizing those patterns.
Drum technique. Drum technique.
So you got all those, and then you've got obviously the sports, which are more akin to boxing. Really, you're getting in the ring, you're doing certain techniques which are allowed, some you're not, and just look at the fight we had with Tyson recently with that YouTuber. You wonder how much of it's real to begin with. There's debates on that. But at the same time,
that was a Netflix thing, wasn't it? Like a pay-per-view thing on Netflix globally. Did you you watch that then? Was it okay? Because
I knew it was going to be a fixed fight, and it was. Because
Tyson's like 60.
Yeah, but he still would have cleaned him up. Now he's didn't move. He was actually even kissing his gloves to a certain bit just to not fight back because he was paid. It's pretty obvious he's paid not to fight back and to go the rounds and make it look like it's a show. It was an exhibition fight, had it been a real one, I reckon they would have got no more than 3 rounds, and Tyson would have cleaned.
Because Tyson insisted in the run up to it that it wasn't an exhibition, didn't he?
So he says, but I mean, you watch the fight and it's all theatrical. It's definitely, not the right, either that or he just didn't want to fight that night. Like I've seen the way the guy hits bags and he's thrown everything into it. The other guy is sloppy as hell. He's not a boxer, and he certainly doesn't pick people. Was he
waiting for the older man to just simply get tired and then try and sort of then put on a bit of a show and then make it look like
he was slipping all around the floor. His form was horrible. He's not a good boxer at all by any stretch of the imagination. I've done a little bit of boxing. I could tell you that's not boxing. Tyson's an absolute pro. He is absolutely technique, the efficiency of the basics of boxing is foot, hips, and hands in unison in that power. You're planting your foot.
Well, he's one of those blokes as well. He has no neck to speak of.
Yeah, no neck.
Because he was fast and vicious as fuck as well. When we send him. When they used to send him in on somebody, obviously we're going back like 30 years here, but it was they didn't really stand a cane house chance, the other blokes. That man was simply a beast back in the day.
Oh, he is. And the thing is too, his form and his protection, the way he gets under.
Yes, because he hasn't got a neck to protect. It's
that's right. Yeah. And, I give it to a lot of, you go on YouTube, if you want to watch some real serious boxing, it's not those pros. It's the bare knuckle gypsy style boxing in Ireland and stuff like that, and even in the UK.
Which is where somebody like Conor McGregor would come in with.
Yeah. So you're not going to see them here because they have to be very careful. They can only take 2 or 3 hits from bare knuckles. With those big gloves, you can take quite a bit, but with bare knuckle, it's out here. And I'll tell you who was really good at that as a youth was Liam Neeson, or under his real name, William Neeson.
Oh, okay. Is he all these things, all these bits of trivia? He was a bare knuckle fighter.
A bare knuckle fighter, correct? A boxer. Yeah, that's right.
Really?
He got called out by Steven Seagal himself. He said, "That Liam Neeson guy, he can't fight worth a damn. He's punched like a sissy." And I'm like, well, mate, he's starting to have a nice little ponytail and look like a bloody sumo wrestler like he does. Like it's it's ridiculous.
Because he's not a little bloke either, is he, Liam Neeson? He's a big guy.
Big guy, very tall, 6'4", 5", something like that. He's towering above Liam. Was it Ewan McGregor in the prequels even? tall guy, and even Christian Bale in Batman, he's taller than that too. So
I always forget he was in Batman. That's Batman Begins, isn't it? Which is nearly coming up to 20 years ago.
He was also in the third one as well, where it's kind of like a ghost apparition, and as Ra's al Ghul, this dual identity thing that they kept going. There was a nice dovetail in that film too. You got Batman Begins. Obviously, they got Kenjiro Watanabe-san in there to play kind of a fake version of Raz, and it was done really well because he's such a presence on film. And it's Katsumoto.
I do love that
Last
film.
Samurai.
Really, really love Batman Begins. But when we look at you and I, in the last however long we've been talking, we talk about Tyson, we talk about the Karate Kid, we're on about Monkey and the Goodies and all this stuff. I feel I used to kid myself that it was like a prolonged childhood, and that I was sort of reveling in pop culture in the here and now. And I sort of did for a little while. I lived vicariously a little through my kids in the noughties. I got into all sorts of stuff that I was far too old for. But the truth of the matter is that I've never really left the 1980s. And the movies, the TV, the music, sometimes it's literally the music, the material of that time. And other times it's sort of legacy projects as well, sort of movies that are directly connected or inspired by the stuff from that time. The same with the music. If Taylor Swift puts out a new album, I couldn't give a rat's ass. If ABC or Duran Duran put out an album, or Kim Wilde is touring, I want to know where they are and what's going on. But this is how we met, isn't it? Because you are the Lethal Mullet. And Lethal Mullet is a podcast, a cluster of podcasts, but a podcast and a way of life. I think Lethal Mullet is a way of life. And so you have fronted that at the Fandom Podcast Network now for a number of years. And initially, the general sort of where that's anchored is in the 80s, isn't it? And those sensibilities. And you follow the connected dots to that wherever they may go and whichever pattern it may form. But your general mindset is, isn't this all still fun? Looking to see what is inspired by what, how it makes you feel. And the way that you do that is really, really infectious. It's really spontaneous and kind of almost like you make it sound effortless. It's like you're spitballing, but I know that you're not. I know that you're following a line of thought. And you were probably the first person that I spoke to, aside from Kev and Kyle, who was like, "Oh no, I do it like this," and sort of instilling in me this idea, not that anything goes as such, but that there's more than one way to get the job done, and it's actually as much about your personality as anything else. And Adam, you have quite the personality.
Oh, I appreciate that. Very kind words, buddy. And the thing is, I'm enjoying what everyone else enjoyed as well. This is the 80s was such a special time. We didn't need the mobile phones and all the gadgets that we've got now, even though we probably would have thought they were high tech by those standards even. But, we had such a blessed time. The TV shows were better. They weren't censored like they are now. They're not trying to sell everything every 5 seconds, except for the cartoons. The cartoons were trying to sell toys. I'll give them that. But, the great even Friday night TV shows, your Magnum, your Airwolf, your Blue Thunder, A-Team, all those shows were fantastic. The ones in Australia that we got rid of, it's like Foster's, we export it, we don't drink it. It's like Neighbours, Home and Away, and everything except President and Bluey. Bluey we watched, but the rest of it, we
Bluey rules.
Yeah, and I've got to say a big shout out to Erin's father that used to be in a lot of those shows, and A Country Practice as well.
Yeah.
Who, because I only mentioned that to my mum the other day. I said, hashtag Kevin, that is, of course, Kevin, the radio nerd, writes on his lovely wife, Erin. Erin's dad was in Crocodile Dundee, but also he was on a lot of TV shows. And it took me a bit to figure out, I saw him all the time. He was on Blue Heelers, which is another big one, which is country police show sort of thing. And Mum goes, "Oh, he was always in those shows," Yes. And that's the great thing about Aussie TV is if you're on you're on several.
That was Terry Gill, wasn't it? I've never actually spoke to Erin. Hello, Erin out there, if you're watching. I was
Hey,
a
Aaron.
big fan of your dad's. I'm a big fan of yours as well, and the stuff you do. Well, the fact is, you make my mate very, very happy. But I also love it when you're on the podcast as well. Yeah, you talk about these faces of productions because Terry Gill. I used to see him in Prisoner. I think he was in Neighbours as well. He's one of these faces who would pop up and everything. And
Yeah.
those, but you talk about Aussie exports. I am waiting for and all the TV shows and movies of that time. They informed my childhood as well in a sort of a connected way that they obviously did yours, all but from a distance. I mean, and Bluey kind of. I love Blue. I love Bluey. My stepdaughter is a massive Bluey fan. Got the toys, got this, got that, got the other. But I am wondering. It's bound to happen because it happens with all kids. Eventually, they go off the reservation, don't they? When is Bluey going to go nuts with a sawn off and get a motorbike and start causing some mayhem out there and go a little bit mad? I think it's only a matter of time before that happens.
Which brings us to chatting about that franchise. I can tell you, folks, Mad Max, what a fantastic franchise. And, I've got a familial connection to the second film. George Miller, he's our George Lucas out here. Obviously, it's a science fiction franchise to a point. This great franchise, which if you haven't watched the first film at the cinemas or at least at the drive-in, you haven't watched a movie. I mean, this is a thing I got to do with Steve Bisley, who plays Goose, and Nathan Jones, amazing. I've got a big shout out to Nathan because he's such a great guy. Meeting him at the conventions. He's Rictus Rectus from the new film, so from both Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road. And we also met the original toe cutter. That is, of course, the bad guy, Hugh Keys Byrne, at the same place. And Blair from one of our toe cutter. Yeah, toe car. Make sure he's watching. The Knight Rider knows. The Knight Rider. and what's great about it is meeting them is that, Steve was on he had a cop show on the water with Peter Phelps from, Peter Phelps was in Stingers. There's a different show. But there was one where basically they're called water rats and they were on the water, and he did that for years down in, I think.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
But yeah, he played Goose, and we wouldn't have had Top Gun's Goose if it wasn't for this movie too. They stole that. So there you go. There's a little bit of trivia for you. But on the second film, I've got an uncle who is one of the bike riders on it. Who, a lot of those guys, when you look at the stunt riders, were they paid as stuntmen? I'm not sure. Look, at the end of the day, like I've got a good comedian mate who said a similar thing about stunt players in Australia is, hey, look, you want me to do this stunt? It's going to cost you $4,000, but I can crash a bike and it'll only cost you about $200. And so, bottom up, they're paid to get hurt, like to a certain point. Safely hurt, but and that was just one of those movies. Mad Max 2 really set it on fire. It was such a huge film. And then we've got the third one, which is the misunderstood one. Obviously, the director's work partner died in a helicopter accident before they could film the third one. And so they got a second director in with him. And they did this movie that's really misunderstood, I think. You got Tina Turner in there. You got Thunderdome, which is such a brilliant concept. And then there's no real bad guy. Everyone's just trying to survive. And we've done a couple of deep dives on FPN on it. And everyone says, oh, it's such a shit movie. It's crap. We've got this crap soundtrack. Number 2 looks better, and it actually looks like it's filmed better. I'll give it that. But then you got the kids in there. They're kind of like Ewoks in it. They're kind of watering down Mad Max.
It is an odd movie. When I watched the 4 of them a few years ago, I think the problem is, I think it looks really good. I think it's got its own atmosphere. It's got some great set pieces and some fantastic ideas. But I think the problem is, as a film, it's just too pedestrian, and that's to follow in that lineage, and that's why I think it stands out. I think that's why it sort of falls a little flat. Right. I'm quite fond of it myself. But I'll admit it, in the way that I'm fond of most of the Star Trek movies. That myth about all the odd-numbered Star Trek movies are crap. I disagree with that.
I disagree with that too, yeah.
I think the Generations, for example, Star Trek Generations, 30 years old this year, falls a little flat. But it doesn't mean that it's not without merit. It's just, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying, 100%.
Sandwiched by Undiscovered Country and First Contact, it falls flat. And I think that's the issue that Beyond Thunderdome's probably got. It just falls a little flat.
It's like the state of a certain franchise, which you're going to guess very, very quickly.
Which one? They're all in a state. Tell me the one that isn't.
Well, Star Trek has a bit of that too, so I won't even go to Star Trek. It needs it. It needed that Tarantino movie that was promised, that gangster Star Trek that was going to be Pulp Fiction, for it to be rejuvenated. They keep putting people in there that just don't know the franchise, and the franchise was a comedy. It's not just about the sci-fi concept. It's actually a camaraderie of people together working as a team to solve a problem. That's what works so well with the Next Generation. But they're all funny guys, very funny people. And they're all unique in their own way. They're all very well played, great actors. And, you look back in the original, it was more about the triumvirate of Spock, Bones, and Kirk. Spock brought the logic, Bones brought the humanity, and Kirk had to somehow figure out, using that information he's got, to solve what problem he was doing. But with Picard, it was the whole lot of them were just as strong as the one. And that's what made them so great. And these newer ones, Discovery and all that, it started out with a great concept and they've just lost the idea. Strange New Worlds gave a go. And it's all right, but it's pedestrian, I personally think. So you look at, and the other one, of course, is the other big star franchise is they just can't find the thing that they're allowed to run with before the committee comes in, because I don't think it's just this Kathleen Kennedy goings on that everyone rubs on her. It's everybody that's in the Disney board that goes, I've got an idea. And the problem is they don't get voted down. Well, what happens is they're not letting creators truly run with things the way that somebody I'm going to talk about soon who has really got his shit together.
Well, when you and I hadn't spoken for a while, not because either of us had annoyed the other one, simply because of the times, and we both got a bit lazy, didn't we? So we didn't speak for a little while. And when we sort of did a sort of round the houses thing, didn't we, on a normal call? We mentioned Star Wars, and you said, like in a nutshell, where are you at with this? And I said, I'm an ex-Star Wars fan now. That's how I count myself. I made a conscious effort just simply not to watch any of it. I realised that every time I watched something connected with Star Wars, I was either disappointed or it just put me in a bad mood. I thought, you know what? There are enough things going on in the world that put me in a bad mood or that keep me up at night or whatever else. The last thing I want is for Star Wars to become one of them. And so I've sort of parted company with Star Wars, and as a result, after an extended period, not only have I haven't wasted sort of 20, 30 hours of my life watching terrible TV shows, but in all honesty, what I've found is that now I'm at the point where when someone says the name Star Wars to me, I now instinctively go back to thinking of the original trilogy. The prequels, at a push, but certainly the images now that flood my mind are of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, instantly, just boom, like that. And any talk of stuff that came once the thing was signed over to another company, it's just not even there anymore. My mind has been cleansed, Adam. It's been cleansed.
Look, it's not. It's a number of things. It's they have. Obviously, as a company, the power to do whatever they want with this.
Something to do with me. So yeah, fine.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. You should really have your things together, your ducks in order to do things. So for me, I love Star Wars. It's a huge part of my life. Always will. Do I think the directions and things that are happening are cohesive? No, not at all. I think. The original trilogy and then into the prequel era, and beyond. Keep this caveat. This is a children's franchise. This is built for...
That's how I see it.
Up to young teens and on. If you want an adult franchise, I'm just about to talk about another franchise that you should really be following if you're into that. So, as we get to 20s and beyond, like prequels, we're all putting our adult thoughts on Star Wars. Should it be like this? Should be more like Kung Fu. Should be more Matrixy. And which George actually pointed out that people were actually doing that. and it's not right. That's not what he aimed those films to be for. Now, jump forward to now, and obviously it's such a widespread, huge, thing that it can do all those things, but it's lost sight of the kind of story. Apart from what I gather, Skeleton Crew, this new thing, I'm not going to watch it, but those that are saying this is really aimed at the right market. It's something's very Goonies. That's great. The last great one I watched was Andor. Andor was proper, good storytelling, really well built storyline. It even has the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen himself in it, Stellan Skarsgård from Dune. And it is actually a really well laid out, fantastic story. And the look is right. It's like Rogue One. Rogue One was done right. I don't think there was too many minders on that set. They just let the people do what they needed to do to get the story done. And that's the problem with that franchise. I think it's just too many cooks in the kitchen. It's not about the all the stuff behind the scenes that a lot of fans whinge about. No, it's not that. It's when you've got too many people in the way of a creative that needs to get their stuff out there, the creative idea, story, whatever it is, just let them tell their story. Now, jumping forward to the right franchise that is doing that, and that is, of course, Legendary Pictures with Dune. A lot of people have been trying to get Dune happening since the Lynch movie, and which I'm about to give you a bit of a look at. Dune Part 2, brilliant. Dune Part 1 came out, and it was, moderately, for most people, a really good opening into the saga. Timothy Chalamet, obviously. We've got some Star Wars talent there with, of course, Oscar Isaac playing the Duke Leto Atreides. And then, it is a really well laid out thing. And they got the look of it was just like you would read the book. Come forward to now, Dune Part 2, which came out in March. Wow. I mean, this film knocked it out of
March?
March. This year.
I couldn't quite remember when it came out. I still haven't seen this.
Huge. This film is the best science fiction film I've seen in the last 20 years. And that's saying a lot. This is just, Villeneuve obviously took the reins of Blade Runner and then did Blade Runner 2, which I thought was a great film, 2049. Brilliant from not just a design point of view. He got that right and he extrapolated the design from the original and pushed it even further. But when it came to Dune, he knew kind of where he needed to go with it because, again, this was another one that was going to be a Ridley Scott movie at one stage. He was going to do the same idea, split the book into two, just like this. Yeah, I actually covered this on Mullet a while back. He was going to shoot it like the Battle of Algiers, which is a French film which covers sort of a more guerrilla-style warfare, which they were going to do. That's just like what he did here with Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 really just throws it right into the Fremen world, and we really get to see Arrakis.
Because even though I've read the first couple of Dune books when I was a kid, and you and I have spoken about that as well, I'm not a Dune guy, but I knew as a lifelong sci-fi guy and somebody who had a lot of time for the 80s movie, the David Lynch film, I think anybody could tell that a project of this sort of scale, and with the waiting audience that this had, needed a visionary to steer the ship. And they've got that in Villeneuve, haven't they? I mean, however long he remains there, even if he's not there indefinitely, his sensibilities will inform this from here on. Certainly for our living memory, for the rest of our lives, he will be synonymous with this. And the direction he's visually pointed it in will prove to be completely correct. And even though I haven't rushed to see this second one, I'm probably going to watch it over Christmas in 4K and in the comfort of my own home, and I'm really looking forward to it.
This is a film that filmmakers that we love are looking at and just going, he's schooled them. That's how good it is. Like the sandworm scene where we get to see Paul actually do his first sandworm riding is huge. It's thrilling. It's like going to the roller coasters. And even Steven Spielberg was gobsmacked. He said, I've never seen such a brilliantly done film. Christopher Nolan wishes he made the film. He said he can't get over it. He's like, you're the biggest fan of Villeneuve. And Villeneuve has never lost stride. He did Sicario, knocked it out of the park. Arrival is one of my favorite science fiction films. If you haven't seen that, folks, that is another great one. Which
Nolan and Villeneuve, they do share a kind of. I mean, I wouldn't say you'd get their movies mixed up, but I think they do belong to the same kind of. I think got a similar way of rolling out story. I don't imagine any of them could ever make like a 70-minute, for example. They believe, they tell their stories in epic ways and in very visual ways, and so I can believe that. I can believe that there's that kind of professional envy.
Oh, without a doubt. And obviously, we're covering a lot of this in Mullet, which is the FPN's June show. Now, with that too, we've also got a new TV show which is just launched in the last 2 weeks, which is, of course, the great June Prophecy, starring our very own, right there. You can see him on screen there, folks. He's on there to the left, actually in the right of your screen. There's, of course, Travis Fimmel, Mark Strong there too, Emily Watson, and Olivia Williams as well. Mark Strong's actually on the latest episode of their official podcast too. He's actually a June fan.
Are they all Brits and Aussies there? They are, aren't they?
Yeah. Actually, even one of the Atreides that's in it is an Aussie as well too. Yeah, there's all Brits. I don't think there's any Americans on this one, if I can remember right. But yeah, Trav's great. He's playing this character that's actually new to the franchise called Desmond Hart, who's a Carino soldier that's been sitting on Arrakis for 12 tours, gets devoured by a giant worm, gets eaten alive, and then somehow is still alive. But he's come back with creepy supernatural powers. And he's going up against...
I see, that sounds really good. That sounds really good. I'll be honest with you. I saw the trailer to this, and it left me cold. It seemed very still, very dull. Everybody's frowning. And I thought, I don't know if I even want to watch this. But it is worth it. Because it looks very humorless, which is fine. I don't need everything to be, it's a certain kind of sensibility.
I mean, this isn't kiddie storytelling. This is the one thing that if you're a Star Wars fan and you're sick of, all the kiddie fair style storylines, or in Star Trek, whatever, June's what you need, because June.
Yeah, don't look for it in Star Wars because it's not made for that. But this could be.
No, it's not made for that. This is adult science fiction, serious stuff. And the thing that's confusing about this show is that a lot of people think it's about the same time as Paul. No, this is actually 10,000 years before. And this is, to put it in perspective, June's set in our actual real world. So June is actually 20,000 years from our time. Earth has been destroyed. We're actually on other planets. We're in Arrakis and all these other ones. But this is set 10,000 years from us, so it's about halfway to June. And it's just after a massive war called the Butlerian Jihad, which they're also saying it in the show. They call it the Machine Crusade, but it's the same thing. Basically, there was a massive enslavement of humanity by thinking machines. Some of them were human that was turned into machines, but a lot of it was AI, artificial intelligence, which just took over everything. Yeah. And this is where James Cameron's pinched the whole thing from June for Terminator, by the way, folks. A lot of people don't know that. But
it seems like a lot of sci-fi does track back to this, to Frank Herbert.
It really does. It really does. So the thinking machines enslaved humanity, and there was a massive war that went for a couple of hundred years. And one of the heroes of that is Vorian Atreides, which is he's talked about all through the show. I do believe you're going to see him. He's the first of the Atreides. And what's interesting about him in the Butlerian Jihad and the actual books by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert, he is actually on the thinking machine side because his father is a Cymac, what they call basically a guy that's pretty old. They take his brain out and they put it in a machine to make him live on. So he's probably a millennia old by that stage. His name is Agamemnon, from, of course, the House of Atreus, where you get the name Atreides. So it traces back to Troy, to obviously the battles there that they had with the Agamemnon and obviously the whole army of Achilles and all that stuff. So that's where Atreides comes from. It comes from warrior culture. But Agamemnon goes, I'm going to take that name. That sounds a great name. And he has many sons from this massive sperm bank that he had before he turned himself into a machine. And he had 13 sons, one of them being, of course, Vorian. Vorian, being such a good guy, he used to work with the machines as a guy that would fly around to the planets and just make sure that the Evermind called Omnius was given, full run on the planets, and it was running fine in his thing called the Dream Voyager. And eventually he goes, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be helping the humans fight. And he turns with a lady called Serena Butler, and they do the first of the fight backs. And it's called the Butlerian Jihad in her name. And one of his best friends is a Harkonnen by the name of Xavier Harkonnen, this massive tertiary general, basically.
See, you've sold me. You've sold me again on this. See, this is another thing I love about you. Your enthusiasm does rub off, and I think, okay, Adam's seen something in this. I know you're a big Dune fan anyway, but I think now I'm thinking it's only 6 episodes. You know, I might I might not like it, but then again, I might, and therefore, it's such a big franchise. What have I lost? Particularly, most of these actors on screen, I can't stand. Is it Emily Mortimer?
No,
is that her
that's
name?
Emily Watson. That's Emily Watson.
Emily Watson. I can't stand her. But the other 3, I've always liked them.
That'd work for you, because she's like basically the villain of the piece, so that'd work for you.
But the other 3, I've liked them in practically everything I've ever seen them in.
Mark's great.
Fun people.
He seems so genuine. And out of that Green Lantern film that Ryan Reynolds keeps bashing, I did Ryan Reynolds. What
is that about? You'd think he was happy enough to.
Damn good.
It's a decent movie. So it's certainly a better than average movie, and he was more than happy to be in it at the time. That annoys me.
It does. And Mark Strong played a really good role in it, which is
he was great
as Sinestro. Sinestro is one of my favorite DC characters because, as somebody who is a big sci-fi fan, the Green Lantern comics, particularly through the late 90s to 2000s. When I was at graphic college, I was reading those. I wasn't reading.
Yeah, Batman. It was great. Green Lanterns was my favorite DC title. It's awesome. Fantastic. So when Mark Strong, I think has he been in? He's in the Kingsman movies, isn't he? I think he's in
Shazam
the new Matt Reeves Batman thing, the Penguin. So he gets about a bit. I was surprised to see him turn up in this. But yeah, I am gonna give this a go. What I'll probably do is I'll watch Dune Part 2 and then I'll watch this. So I'll give it a little bit of breathing space. If you're still smiling by the end of this, then I'll think, okay, if they've kept Adam on board, it's probably going to be all right.
Dune Part 2, wait till you see Stilgar in it, who only had a small part in Part 1. Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, is my favorite thing in the movie.
Yeah, I like him.
He's so devout because he believes that Paul's going to be, Mahdi, their leader. And everything he does, even if he picks up a spoon to eat, he goes, "Oh, the Mahdi knows what to eat. Oh, Mahdi!" He's so into it. And then there's a massive cliffhanger at the end of this because they're already planning to do Dune Part 3. Now, for those that don't know, have you seen Part 1 before?
I have, yeah.
You have? Okay, so Jason dies in it, of course.
Yeah.
That is, of course, Duncan. Well, guess what? He's not dead.
Dun,
he comes
dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So, he is. Technically, he is dead. So, in the third movie they're doing, which is based on the second book, Dune Messiah, set about 12, maybe 13 years later, depending on how they do it for the movie. Basically, all of a sudden, Duncan comes back. And they're like, Duncan? What the hell? How does this? Well, he does come back. He's given as a gift by the Taliaxu, who are a pretty advanced cloning for basically planet, the Bene Tlilax. They come in and they give him, as a present, they give this thing called a Gola, which is basically a complete reproduction of the character of Duncan Idaho from just flesh that's left over from the dead corpse. And so at this stage, he knows that he is Duncan, but he doesn't know who he really is. And the whole story is about Duncan not realizing that he's a weapon there to kill the Emperor. But if he's able to find his own soul through the process, he'll be able to save himself and the Emperor. So it's going to be heavily...
that's immeasurable. I gave up on the Dune books. I think I was too young to be reading them at a time when I tried to read them, to tell you the truth. I gave up on them because I found them very heavy and very dry. But that pitch is that's a story I can get on board with. That's something I could look forward to. Your enthusiasm for it, Adam, it knows no bounds. I know it's one of several things you talk about over on the FPN. I can't possibly end this without asking you about this. I suspect you've seen it. I went to see it the other day. A movie, a cinematic masterpiece, sort of, that seems to be becoming a franchise now. Is Gladiator. I've just seen some. Obviously, Gladiator 2 is in cinemas at the moment, all over the world. Mm-hmm. I saw a whisper yesterday. Apparently, Ridley. This may be everywhere by the time we put this out. Apparently, Ridley's just announced that Gladiator is now going to be a trilogy. Have you heard this?
It is 100%. And Paul Mescal will be back as the Emperor. Gladiator 3, yeah. So they're looking to do it soon. I mean, if you want it Ridley to direct it, I'd be doing it like ASAP because he's not young, folks. He's in his
86.
86, yeah. So he's still going. He's like bloody William Shatner. They just keep going, just keep ticking along. I mean, William Shatner's about 95.
When I watched Gladiator, I watched Gladiator 2 last week, and I got immersed in it. I think it's a different. I think it's a related. It's an extension of slightly different animal to the original film, starring another one of your countrymen, Russell Crowe, which I watched. I also watched it that week because it had been such a long time since I've seen it. So I watched both of these movies in the space of a few days, and obviously, in my opinion, it works. And Gladiator 2 is successful. I think this is a good movie. I'd recommend everybody go and see this, particularly to see Pedro Pascal. I thought he was excellent in it. A big surprise because I got so bored with seeing him in everything. Pedro Pascal is really good in this, and it reminded me why I liked him so much in earlier roles in Game of Thrones and things like that. Denzel Washington probably steals the movie, every scene he's in, but I did think that Paul Mescal, as in the lead character, if I'm not going to spoil it for people who might not have seen it, so I won't tell you. But he plays the lead character in it. I found him very charismatic. Yeah. People will say, "Oh, he's no Russell Crowe." Well, no, Russell Crowe's Russell Crowe. This guy's got a different something about him. But after the movie, and I let it sink in, and I lived with it a little because I do think it's a slightly different animal than the first one. I came away entertained, Adam, and I remember thinking about a day later, you know what? I wonder if it's quite possible that this could be a trilogy. Fun enough, I didn't think some sort of never-ending series, but I thought, well, on the strength of what he's just done in sequeling a film from 25 years ago, there could be a third film in this where this sort of, because it's all hinged on the dream. It's the dream of Rome that is kind of the hero of this franchise now. That's the running theme of it. I think, well, that dream is not going to end there any more than it did at the end of the first film. So there probably will be a third one, and it seems that it is what they're going to do. But I imagine that Ridley would want to sort of catapult it another maybe 20 years in the future. But you say it is going to be sooner rather than later, and the same guy will probably be at the centre of it. I thought, well, they'll have to do it centering around a third character, maybe another generation or two on from the characters that we saw in the second one. Never mind the first, but you believe that it will star Paul Mescal and it will be.
There's a reason why, is because he was talking about in the interview, is that he likens this film to The Godfather, and it's right, because what happened to Michael, the character in that, is that he became the Godfather. He didn't want to be it. Didn't even want to be involved in the crime of the family, but he realised that he had to take on what his father had. He had to take it on a job that he didn't want, and he's going to do it his way. And that's basically, it's going to be the same scene with an Irishman going, I left, but they keep pulling me back in. That's the same idea, which brings us back to June. June is the Godfather as well. Well, actually, the Godfather was that written about the same time? I can't remember. But, it's the same story. Again,
Godfather was written in the 60s as well, wasn't it? The original Mario Puzo book. Early 60s, I think.
That's right. And because that's the same story. The father dies, you got to take on the mantle of leadership. A job you don't want, but you got to do it. And you got to do it your way. That's what Paul does, but he supersedes it. And so does Michael. Michael does the same thing in that franchise. That's why I've always liked The Godfather. I personally prefer
I do too.
Book. The book for me was better than the films, but the films are still fantastic too. Even the third one, technically,
I like the third one
3 now. Yeah, me too. But now they call it a coda, so it's just kind of like another film.
So it doesn't cock up it doesn't blot the copybook of the original one. No, I think Ridley Scott, obviously, the stuff to do with Alien, can be a little controversial for some people. There are people who really hate the Covenant and Prometheus, the David trilogy.
They need to grow up then, because it's brilliant. It's exactly what should be done. This whole thing of going backwards. Okay, I've got something to say. The Predator films that they're all doing, and these bloody Alien films, they look fantastic. I'll give credit for the filmmakers making some beautiful films. They look fantastic. But we're stepping ourselves back, folks. We've got somewhere with these films which we did really well. The Predator, which was Shane Black's film, was great. It was fantastic. It was a Spielberg film.
Yeah, I like that one too.
That universe, right? Great. And what do? We go back in time to, fine. I like the idea of Prey, but it shouldn't be considered like a Predator film. Now they completely changed the Predator.
It's a thinner concept, isn't it? And it's a backward step. I enjoy Prey as well, but I think you're quite right. I think it is.
Yeah, it's stepping back. It's nothing wrong with the film itself. It's good. It's a good film. Is it a Predator film? Hell no. Same with Alien Romulus. It took me 5 minutes of watching to go, come on.
It's a fun movie. I had a good time with Alien Romulus, but I'd be foolish. I'd be foolish to argue that it wasn't a thinner movie. And again, like you say, it represents a backstep.
I've always said Alien 3 is the better film out of Aliens, and Alien 3 is sequels, because why? They didn't just go the easy route and go, oh, we got lots of guns. Ooh. Alien 3 was smart because they did the one thing that made it even more terrifying. They gave them nothing. No weapons of any kind.
Yeah, I did like that aspect of Alien. I'm a fan of Alien 3. I love that movie, but
love it.
I
grew up as a fan of Alien, and Aliens even more so. Loved it in my 20s and stuff like that. When I saw it's not a work print, it's an assembled print or whatever it is that's on that massive set of Blu-rays I've got now. That Alien 3 is a far better film than Aliens. Sorry, James Cameron, it is. And, I'm not a fan of Alien Resurrection, but then we lead into Prometheus. Prometheus had some real meat and potatoes to it. And then Covenant kind of answered some questions. And, I get it. I know why the people just weren't backing what Ridley was going to do. But I agree with some of
the knives are out for... The knives seem to be out for Ridley Scott, as if the guy has got no self-discipline. And yet he could have sat there. I'm sure that he could have made 101 Blade Runner movies. He could have done this. He could have done that. In my opinion, he does seem to go with the projects that speak to him. And yes, some land and some don't.
Napoleon.
Some hit for everybody, some don't. I know people who love that movie. I know some people who really love that film. I've not seen it, but I'm sure it can't possibly be as bad as people have made out to be.
Not as bad as Joker 2.
Well, it can't be. I mean, what I liken this sort of stuff to is I saw Francis Ford Coppola's Megapolis. Absolutely shocking film. Easily one of the worst films I've seen in my life. And so to have a pop at Ridley Scott for making a second Gladiator film, which is perfectly fine. To insist that Ridley Scott shouldn't round off the David trilogy with a sequel to Alien Covenant when there was nothing really wrong with Alien Covenant. Certainly, as you're saying, you're quite right. Alien Romulus, a fun film, full of flavour, and it has got a certain sort of edge to it, but it is a backward step. I would personally rather see the 86-year-old man who brought this thing to the screen in the first place, and who kind of if he didn't create a visual language. There's an argument that says that John, who directed Dark Star, was that John Carpenter?
John Carpenter, yeah.
Thought so. There's an argument that says that John Carpenter originated that, but Scott refined it. I think he's entitled to finish it off. I know it's not a charity in these movies; they cost people money, but I want to see that. I want to see it. And if Scott's vision for Gladiator doesn't end with Russell Crowe in that helmet, on the strength of Gladiator 2, I'm all for that. I don't think that Ridley Scott is some sort of doddering old man, or some a guy who's the instruments in his kit are not as sharp as they used to be, like Francis Ford Coppola, who I think is just well past his best, and can't be. I'm not going to indulge that man with any more of my time watching his silly films. But Scott, I feel that for every under par movie that Scott's ever made, there's either a surprise or simply a fun time at the cinema to be had with most of his movies. And so therefore I'm pretty much in, Adam, with wherever he wants to take this, or anything else that he wants to do for the remainder of his years, because he says he's never going to retire. And
No, he
I
won't.
think,
He'll keep
wow,
going.
yeah, I respect
He'll
that,
keep going.
I
He's great.
respect the sentiment of that.
It's the same with George Miller. I mean, he just pumped out Furiosa. He's talking about doing Wasteland, which is the Tom Hardy Mad Max film. So it'll be one set roughly about 12 months, 18 months before Fury Road. So he's doing prequels set up before Fury Road to set up
Oh,
a
okay.
new era. So you do actually get to. So I'm assuming most of you out there have seen Furiosa because it was such a highly sought after movie this year. But Furiosa came out, fantastic. It is one of the three big ones this year, obviously. Dune Part 2, Furiosa, and Gladiator 2. But Furiosa is great because it's different than Fury Road. It's told in blocks of storytelling. You get to see her as a kid. Furiosa
I haven't seen this yet either. I'm not the biggest fan of Fury Road. I like Fury Road, but it's not something I would rave about. And again, how I was with this is it's a Mad Max movie without Mad Max in it. Why would I want to see that?
But he's in it.
Oh, okay.
So that's one thing that a lot of people go, oh, he's not in the movie. No, he actually is. So if you watch them, I'm not going to spoil it. You'll see it. Not in it for long, but he is.
I know it's a terrible thing to say, because I've got daughters as well as sons, but I'm sort of sick of movies that are led by chicks. And I'm sure this is fine. I'm sure it is. Enough people that I respect, who I know don't watch any old shit, do say that this is fine. And I do like this actress, Anna Taylor-Johnson, isn't it? Anna Taylor-Joy. What's her name?
You'll see her in Dune Part 2 as well.
What's her name again, Adam? Tell me her name again. Anna Taylor-Joy, is it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So she's going to be in number 3 even more so. But yeah, honestly, this is Furiosa. It's not really a Mad Max movie. It's its own thing. It's her story. You get to still see all the things that you saw in Fury Road. You'll get to see. It's about maybe 20 years difference or something like that, maybe 30, because it's told in blocks. But Chris Hemsworth steals the show in this as the new character in it. You've also got some great talent around it. But I found this to be maybe even a better film than Fury Road because the way the storytelling was a bit more linear, but also the stunts I thought were better, a bit more practical. It wasn't just all on the road, which was, if you look at Fury Road, it's kind of like the Hobbit, there and back again. But it's the same with, I think, when we get to hey Liam, there you go. But even with Mad Max, the Tom story, it is based off something that was going to be done in the 80s. So the Wasteland was actually a TV show they were going to do, not with Mel. Mel had basically moved on from the franchise after number 3 because he'd moved back to the States. And they were going to get a guy from the film The Light Horseman that was going to be playing Mad Max on TV. And the whole idea was he was trying. Yep, the whole idea of the Wasteland was an older Max in his mid-30s going through the wasteland trying to find the pieces to his car after number 3, because basically his car had been dismantled and he wanted to put the Interceptor back together so he could travel properly and stuff. And so it was just him walking to towns like Shane in the Western, solving problems, getting pieces of his car, and by the end of the TV show, he'd have his car and could take off. That's basically
that sounds like, that sounds to me a lot like that first season of The Mandalorian when he's trying to assemble his armor, his Beskar armor.
Pretty much, yeah. And then the guy that they're eventually going to do it was Light Horseman, a great Australian film, folks. If you haven't seen it, I've actually plugged it on my channel a few times. It's about the Battle of Beersheba, where the Brits and the Aussies and the Kiwis all got together and with that guy from over your way, what's his name? T. Lawrence of Arabia. And they got into the town of Beersheba against the Turks and the Germans and basically got the water wells. And Indiana Jones apparently was there too. It's in Young Indy too. But and the director of that one was Simon Winsor, who ended up doing Lonesome Dove, the Western series, done a ton of Westerns. I did The Phantom as well. Great big director, huge director.
I love The Phantom, the Billy Zane movie.
Billy Zane, 100%.
Yeah, it's great.
Actually, Billy Zane. Funny that you're going to take another tangent here, folks. He has just done, and this will tie into Francis Ford Coppola for a second.
Something to do with The Godfather, isn't it? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. So it's like kind of like a being John Malkovich for Marlon Brando. So it's a bit like a being Marlon Brando. He looks just the part. He's filled right out now, being that little bit older. The hair's off and everything like that. But they've given this hairpiece to him. That period of The Godfather and up through to Apocalypse Now in the 70s. I mean, you could not think that it's not him. I mean, it looks just like him. It's crazy, unbelievable. Billy Zane, great guy, and he's a huge fan. That's how he got the movie done. Is that he'd done
mate. I love The Phantom. I think we have to have a conversation about that another time. We'll put that in the list. I've got a little box here, stuff I think Adam and I are bound to talk about now. We're sort of reconnecting and making our way through this has to be one of them. Some of the things we've talked about this time are things I didn't think we'd talk about. Some of them are things I absolutely knew we would talk about. But I'm sure that next time there'll be more of the same, everything all around the houses and in between too. Let's finish off with these guys because I didn't have this to hand over. There they are.
Oh, there we are.
They're the goodies, and you're definitely one of the good guys as well, as far as I'm concerned, Adam. You mentioned about the goodies earlier on, and sincerely, You didn't believe me when I told you this first, but obviously the goodies, we made that in Britain. It was on when I was a kid, and then the goodies culturally completely disappeared from British culture, vanished. Their stuff was never repeated. They never got mentioned in clip shows. The guys, the three of them did turn up in other TV shows, but doing completely different things. The goodies was never mentioned, and you could not see those shows. Meanwhile, in Australia, you were getting them shown stripped across the week alongside Doctor Who and Monkey and other things. So you were getting the repeats that we weren't. Again, you bastard.
Yep. Monday to Friday. Yep. It was great. I loved it.
So I'm well jealous.
We had that. We had Sooty. We had, what else did they put on there? They did Gumby. I don't know if you got it. Sooty, the little hand puppet show.
Yeah.
We had, what else did we have from over there? They had a bit of Flying Circus on there too, a little bit too. The old
the Monty Python's original
Monty
Python
Python's
show.
And the crazy walking shit and all that.
There are several things that we can compare notes on. Again, both in the present and the past across these calls. A couple of Generation Xers from completely different time zones, so doing our best to help one another through middle age, I suppose, in as raucous a fashion as we possibly can. We barely even mentioned this, which is a pretty good thing as far as I'm concerned, and I've no doubt we'll get round to that as well as everything else. What we want to know from you out there is, what do you make of all of this, of all the things that we've touched on this time, of the wisdom that Adam, who's Adam? I told you it's too early. That Adam has bestowed upon you and I. Let us know in the comments. Adam, if people want to hear more from you, see more from you, Lethal Mullet is a thing. 250 episodes of that now, still going very, very strong.
Yeah, it's huge. We've got all that out there. We've got the June show as well, so you can catch us at fbnet.podbean.com or at The Lethal Mullet on just about every social network.
Adam, it's good to catch up with you, mate. What a call.
You too, likewise.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I like this. We're going to do this again sooner rather than later, aren't we?
We will do, buddy. You take care, eh?
We get the steam is pouring at the bottom. We'll see you in the comments.